your
Google Drive?
Google Drive?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to pull that up. Do you have any questions getting started here about the order and organization?
Well,
Anything
I have a question about the because well here I have like the coding, but I was like kind of stuck. Later on, I was like based on my research questions doing the coding and the discussion. So I want to know if there is a chance to change a research question, like not completely change the question.
All right. What do you propose?
The
What are you
question
thinking
is
about?
which grammatical errors do teacher correct when students speak, and the change will be like which error techniques do teachers use when students speak.
So error techniques. Did you talk about error techniques in your literature review?
Yes.
All right. And how many error techniques are you planning on discussing in your findings?
My findings 3. I have 5 in my lit review,
Okay.
and I find out that teachers mostly use three of them.
Okay. I don't see a problem.
Okay.
Yeah. And as you are looking at your research questions, how many research questions do you have?
3.
Okay. Because I see. Do you need still to make some modifications here? So error correction must be carefully taken. Error correction must be carefully by taking into considerations. I don't know. You might want to check your punctuation here. This doesn't sound like a question. Which type error correction must be carefully applied by taking into consideration when to correct student speaking errors. So check your punctuation here. What types of grammatical errors do teachers correct when students speak?
That will be the change.
Okay, so you just wrote it again down here. Yeah, just check this because it looks like you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 questions, and I think you're repeating those.
So I erase those one of the bottom and
Yeah.
change the punctuation in the paragraph.
Yeah, my suggestion for this last paragraph right before your method is one paragraph, introduce your research questions, but in a paragraph form. You don't have to create bullet points, but you can just include it in the paragraph. And then finish this paragraph with kind of a closing sentence, some sort of summarized sentence to kind of finish it off. So you might want to just revisit this, and I'll just say revisit based on today's discussion. Okay. All right, so we have 3 questions. The modified one, when do teachers correct and how? Okay. And so let's see, how do you want to order or organize your?
I try to organize like first like the evidence, and then like the analyze it.
Okay, but in terms of your research questions, what would be the most logical way to answer your research questions in general? How do you want to organize?
Well, first of all, like given the errors that teachers commonly use, that is the first question that I'm going to change. Because the question that I have in Google Drive is like which grammatical errors do teachers.
But you're going to focus on strategies.
Yes, and techniques like they use meta-linguistic clues, recast, and repetition.
Okay.
So in my lead review, I have those 3 plus 2 other.
Because you're talking, are you going to talk about types of errors in your findings? Did you mention it in your literature review? The types of errors. Did you do an analysis on the types of errors?
Well, my findings. That's the reason I want to change like the first research question. So maybe I have to change that information.
I mean, here's the thing, because you're talking about error correction and types of errors. Let's see, error correction. Correcting errors. Okay, the error correction might be tied into strategies. But you have a section here on types of errors. So
that section, I think it is like more like talking about speaking errors, pronunciation errors, and then like just like mentioning in order to focus on the grammatical errors that is going to be like the complete.
So what types of errors are you focusing on?
The grammatical errors, the grammar errors.
Grammar errors.
Grammar spoken.
But more specific, any specific grammar errors?
No.
Just all. But in your literature review, you talk about all types of errors, not just grammatical errors.
I just mentioned like those like in a very general way, like pronunciation, but I focus on the grammatical ones.
So errors must be identified or classified as. I mean, you talk about errors and mistakes must be differentiated. So, are you differentiating? Are you going to label these as mistakes or errors? Errors must be identified and also classified in order they must be treated and ignored. Some errors. Okay, so you're talking about ignoring some. Errors must be classified in different categories going on macro. Okay, so all right, so performance errors, competence, how can communication? All right, so yeah, you need to. The idea with your literature review is to try to talk about or see how it's related to your own results or link the results that you have in your own study to your literature review. So there's no problem changing your research questions, but as long as you still are tying your results into your literature review, because they may say, well, why are you talking about types of errors if you don't talk about it in your results? That's the thing. There's not a lot. You don't include information in your literature review that doesn't directly relate. And I understand what you're saying, that it's building up to maybe something else, but it all needs to be tied in to your results. So just try to keep that in mind when you're giving your results. In this case, if you're going to keep this section for types of errors, that you talk in some way about, maybe you talk about these strategies or for these types of errors.
Okay.
And you talk in terms of either errors or mistakes, or global errors, or macro errors, micro errors, or whatever terminology you want to use here, that you use that same terminology in your own findings, so that it's linked, that they don't ask, because they may ask you questions about something that you mentioned in the literature review about your own study.
Mm-hmm.
That's all free game. That's a possibility. And I want us to work on this, and you to reflect on what possible questions that they may ask you. Like, what could they be asking me? We're talking about the oral defense, but it's the same thing they're going to be asking when they read your written thesis. Okay, well, I see you have this, but what about the types of errors, type of thing? So just look at your literature review, and when you're writing out your results, keep that in mind.
So maybe, about this kind of type of errors, if I only had like the observation, the two observations like source, do I have to include it? Because you told me like
the preference is to have more than
two.
Yeah, the preference is to have more than one. So try to find any information that would help you distinguish either between errors and mistakes, or macro, micro,
because
or
that was like the thing I was like focused like to check the information I had on the three different instruments.
Sources.
So then I was like, okay, I have this, and this is related, this is related, this is related.
Okay.
Because maybe for the types of errors, I only have one instrument that directly relates with this.
And what instrument is that?
The observation.
the transcriptions from your observations?
Yes.
And what can you give me an example? Uh, like an example of a type of error, a data source that helps you distinguish the types of errors?
What about when they were like talking, teacher was like focusing on one student about, well, this is the correct, not like directly giving the correction, but teacher gave clues in order to the student to understand. And when he didn't got it, like he went to the whole group, like he supported them.
And did you ask any questions to the teacher about that in an interview, about about that, about that case, about that behavior that you observed?
Well, no, I have like on the interview, like when they say like they try to support, well, not support, like to get the students help in order to arise some
You
awareness
had
for
an
the error.
interview with teachers, right?
Yes.
And did you ask them anything about that case? That what?
Actually, both of them gave me this information in the questionnaire I gave to them. With
Okay.
I had two questions related. So when do they correct and how do they correct? And they told me, well, I wait until my student finishes, or when I asked to give me a specific example, they
I mean, that's related, no, to the type of errors, no?
okay.
I mean,
Yes.
for me, the type of errors is like the what? It's the lowest, most simplest piece of information. Everything else that you talk about, the how and the what and the why, is about those types of errors, whatever types of errors that you're talking about.
Okay.
So I think it's there. All I'm suggesting is that you use the same words that you have in your lit review.
Okay.
That you call it a mistake or an error, that you're not just using those two terms. However you define this mistake and error in your literature review, say that. I mean, try and maybe you didn't, if it's still possible to do a quick analysis between mistakes and errors or micro or some other classification, try to include that. Maybe just one graph.
Okay.
But use the terms that you used here. Be very careful with the terminology and try to reference what you mentioned in your literature review.
Okay.
Okay, so basically everything, how and the why of everything has something to do with either macro or micro, and so you just need to, in your analysis, make that distinction and say, okay, if we're only going to talk about these two types of errors, fine. But say that, be explicit. Say these are the two errors,
Okay.
and the other errors there were less, or they didn't exist, or whatever. Okay. Um, so now, so when you develop your order, the organization of your review, I'm sorry, your results and discussion section, you're going to begin with, let's see.
Evidence.
Yeah, but you're talking first about error correction techniques.
Yeah.
And then you're going to talk about when do teachers correct. Okay. Now, I don't see a how they correct, when they correct. Because you have a question, a how question, no?
How do students feel
Oh,
about?
how do they feel? So it's just when. So, okay, that's fine. When do teachers correct? How do students feel? Okay. So error correction techniques. Okay, so here you say there are three main types of error correction techniques used. Repetition, Okay, so how many teachers are you including in your study?
Well, first of all, I mentioned the teachers that I applied the filter questionnaire.
Okay, so remember the filter questionnaire, you're only going to include the data from the teachers that you observed, your participants.
Okay.
So how many teachers did you observe?
2 teachers.
All right,
On those.
only those.
Okay.
Okay, and I can include in the information from the other 14 teachers, whatever that answers. Just set those aside. So I would modify this first paragraph just to include.
Essentially, like the first and second, I think, is related to those filter questionnaires.
Yeah, so we just want to focus on now. But any of the information from the questionnaires from those 2 teachers you can use.
Okay.
But all the other teachers were just the main purpose was to find the.
So maybe that information I only keep that information in order to the people in there ask me something about why we have this teacher.
Yeah, you want to make sure that you have a good reason for choosing these 2 teachers. So, and maybe in the method section under participants, you might have 1 or 2 sentences. These 2 teachers were chosen because, and you explain why. You don't even have to explain the questionnaire. You just say, these teachers I will use these techniques most often, or something like that. And then if they may ask, well, how did you choose these 2 teachers? You can go in, well, I applied a questionnaire to 16 teachers, and I chose these 2 based on how they answered.
So maybe I can drop the information and add the information about the types of errors.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And
section.
So right. And so before you lead into the techniques, maybe a quick paragraph about the actual types of errors, and then you lead into the techniques, and then the techniques relate to the errors. So you're linking what you mentioned before and so on. Okay. And so we have that second paragraph, mixing different types of error correction. Yeah, just be careful with the terminology. Sometimes I'm saying technique, but you decide, is it a technique or strategy, and then stick to it. Don't mix, the technique or strategy. So whatever you say in the literature review, be very, very careful with terminology. So say mixing 2 different types of error correction techniques or error correction strategies, and so on. Learning and teaching tools, both. Later, we're going to need to focus a lot on grammar. We need to spend a lot of time, but make sure that each sentence has a subject and a predicate. That review complex sentence, compound sentences. Make sure that they. Later, I'll talk to you more about that. But I'm just noticing here that we need to be very careful with the grammar as you write your paragraphs here. Participant A and B now. If we're looking at teachers, go ahead and give the teachers pseudonyms. So the first time that you mention the pseudonym, you may say Tom, and then in parentheses, pseudonym. You see this. Pseudonym is like a fake name.
Okay.
So we're not going to use real names. You're just going to give them names, but it's more personal than like participant A or teacher A. You can just say Tom, and then pseudonym. The first time you mention it, pseudonym. After that, you don't have to say pseudonym. You just say Tom.
Okay, so I drop I erase the participant A and participant B.
Right. You can say, yeah, but the teachers, comma Tom, and you don't have to say teacher Tom. You can say Tom, but the first time you mention it, you may just say the participants of this study were 2 teachers, comma Tom and Jill, and in parentheses pseudonyms. Tom, yeah, then you follow them by the pseudonym. Provide information about the correct. All right, now this is important here. You say here, now you're starting the evidence. Participant A and B provide information about their error correction techniques in which they mentioned that they use different types of techniques. We need a direct quote. What did Tom or what did teacher A say? What did teacher B say? And give a direct quote. If teacher B said basically the same thing as teacher A, but teacher A had a better quote. They really used a really good quote. Then you can just use the one quote and say the other teacher felt the same.
Okay.
Okay, so you don't have to quote everything by every participant, but you need, when anytime you present any results from an interview or from your transcripts from your observations, like the teacher, what did the teacher say in class that you observed? How did the students respond in class? Direct quotes. A lot of direct quotes.
So evidence and direct quote.
But the evidence is the direct quote. So everything that we're talking about here, these direct quotes are evidence. And so I would replace that with you paraphrasing what they said. See? So think of it like this. The direct quote, that's the evidence. Then later on, whether it's the same paragraph or the next paragraph, you're going to discuss that quote in context with what you observed and what the students feel and so on. Okay. All right, so we have here information of corrective techniques. In the case of Tom, or you can say teacher Tom mentioned in the questionnaire 3 different techniques. Da, 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 da. And teacher.
So maybe, well, maybe in the questionnaire I have like 2 questions that give me these 3 techniques. So do I have to quote like only like specific parts of these questions in order to give like the evidence?
Yeah, so I'm looking here at the different types of error correction. Are we going to call these strategies or techniques?
Techniques.
Techniques, all right. So the different error correction techniques, all right, I see here, you can say, Tom mentioned in the questionnaire that he uses recast, metalinguistic cues, and repetition. I observed X amount of, how many times did they use recast? Did teacher Tom, use recast, metalinguistic, clues, and or repetition? How did you count it? Did they use it? How much time did he spend?
Okay.
Just some sort of measurement.
Okay.
All right, so teacher Tom said this, and I keep saying teacher Tom, but please don't say teacher Tom, just Tom. Tom said this in the questionnaire. I observed this, the details. And if you ask him something about that in the questionnaire, if he said, oh, I really like using recast more than something else, then you can reference that. Yeah, he uses recast more than, or maybe he said he uses recast more, but I observed that he uses repetition more.
Mm-hmm.
So you're comparing and contrasting these, but specifically about, in this case, a technique that you're looking at, and that's just one teacher. Now, depending on how much data that you have that you want to discuss, you have to decide: do I want to talk about that in one paragraph, just one teacher, or if you don't have a lot of data, or it's fairly short, then you can compare and contrast those 2 teachers in the same paragraph. But you just be careful not to include too much information in one paragraph. If it makes more sense to divide it up, say, okay, teacher A, 3 data sources. Next paragraph, teacher B.
Yeah, because I was facing that problem because I thought that by including teacher Tom and Jill, it was kind of long paragraphs.
Right. So remember that the options I gave you about how to divide up results and discussion, I gave you 2 examples. One was 1 paragraph of evidence, the second paragraph of analyze. The second option 2 was 1 paragraph with evidence and analyze. Now, there's nothing wrong if you have a lot of data. If you want to compare 2 teachers, that you have 1 paragraph of evidence, teacher A, second paragraph, evidence, teacher B, third paragraph, your discussion of A and B. See what I mean? So you actually have 2 paragraphs of evidence with 1 paragraph of analyze. As long as that analyze, you're talking about the 2 teachers and you're analyzing everything that you mentioned in the first 2. Okay? At the end of the day, we just need to have a good balance, but it just depends on, what it is you want to talk about. Maybe you decide that teacher A, teacher B, they basically do the same thing. There's not a whole lot to talk about with the discussion or with the comparing and contrast. Maybe you can do it in 1 paragraph. Okay? And it's going to depend on just the data and what you want to talk about. What's most important? Is it important to talk about how they're different? If you decide, well, no, they basically do the same thing, but it's not that important, talk about something else. What is important about that? Okay. Participant B reinforces the center. Yeah, but this is the idea here. Just we need the details.
Yes.
All right, we really need the details, and direct quotes are really important in results of discussion. Really, really important. They don't have to be super long quotes, but they need to be very much related, to what it is that you're presenting here. A topic and class. All right, so a topic and a class have different moments, maybe crucial moment. The topic is the first context students have with it, all the input, because the rest of the learning events. Participant A shows that most of the corrections were directed to grammar. All right, when you say most of the corrections, how many? These are like frequencies. Even though you're doing qualitative research, you can still, frequency is important. So in this case, how many times did Bob or Tom, whatever, correct? How many times did he use this technique? If we're talking about a specific technique, or are we just talking about corrections in general? Because before you determine different techniques. So you might ask yourself, well, do I need to talk about only certain types of techniques, or now am I just talking about corrections in general?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to be more logical to talk about in terms of certain types of techniques. You've already talked about their preferences of using it. Now, talk about the certain techniques. Maybe you don't talk about all the techniques. Remember, there's data that you're not going to be using. So you have to be very selective about what data that you want to use. So first of all, more specific. Most of the corrections, okay, how many and what type of corrections? Were directed towards grammar and in a more frequent way at the beginning of the grammatical topic. Even if this happened, participant A used different types or different types of correction in different moments. Okay, so again, we need the details.
Numbers.
We need the details, right? And my first, and notice the length of this paragraph. It's pretty long. So I think we need to dig into this paragraph and just take out those few gems, those few good pieces of information, and really talk about that. Maybe you create a chart or table to really make this easier to follow. Okay, remember the readers reading this for the first time. You've got to explain it very plainly, lay it out very in an organized way, so when somebody's reading this, it's okay, they get it, they understand what you want to say. So I look at this next paragraph. Be more specific. What types of error corrections? Ask yourself which ones you're going to talk about. Maybe throw in a table, or a graph, or a chart. So and let the chart present a lot of the results, and you talk more about the interpretation or certain parts of the chart that you need to talk about. You don't have to talk about the entire chart. Don't do a chart and then just discuss the entire chart. That defeats the purpose. You create a chart so that you can talk about something else about the charts. Just draw out certain things that are different about the data that's in the chart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So look at that as well. And yeah, you've got the idea in this next one. You presented a direct quote, and then you talked about your observation. This is the idea. Again, in your observation, during the observation, there were two common moments in which the teacher corrected students. Teacher corrected their students right away, the error that was happening. Can you provide an example? Like you could say, For example, one day, the student asked this, and the teacher immediately responded this way. Just a very short example.
Okay.
Yeah.
For example, when they were looking at comparatives, so one student was saying the sun is more big, and then right away the teacher said bigger.
Exactly. Include that, like a little dialogue.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter, with the little dialogue, you can create another line, and insert the dialogue and then continue with the same paragraph, making sure you don't indent. Remember that when you have an indentation, you're creating a new paragraph. So be careful with that. Okay. But yeah, so just more direct quotes, even from your observations. But this is the idea here. Talking about person B, the teacher mentioned this during the interview. Good. All right. So the good thing here that I notice is that you're not mixing results discussion. That you're talking about results only. That's good. Just take a look again. This paragraph looks a little bit long. We still try to take each paragraph small pieces of information at a time. Just take little bits of information at a time and take it step by step. Not to try to put too much information into one paragraph, because remember, you've got 3 data sources, hopefully, at least two to three data sources. So you're going to fill up text quickly. So just talk about one little thing. And in the next paragraph, talk about, and then discuss it, whatever, and then go on to another one item, one very specific piece of information. Okay? Then after this paragraph, then you'll follow up with, now, a discussion. Now notice here you have a level 2 heading. And this one paragraph looks to me to be all evidence.
Yes.
But you don't have another paragraph that analyzes that.
No, because I
still working.
Yes, I'm still looking on the part.
Okay.
So that is only evidence. So I need to
right.
discuss
So
that.
After this paragraph, before this section, right, you'll have another paragraph that analyzes. But do check and look at this, and just make sure you don't have too much information, right? If you read it and you think, if somebody, try to put yourself in the reader's shoes and say, okay, would they understand what I'm saying? And that's hard to do. You say, if somebody were to read this for the first time, would they understand what I'm trying to say? So try to do that, and but you've got the idea. You've got the idea between the results and the discussion, but really spend the time to look at these sentences, making sure your sentences are clear, that you have a subject and a predicate, and that your ideas are clear. And I'll look more at the grammar a little bit later, but
so like the second paragraph is like in a better way. So I need to spend more time like in the first one. In order to
this paragraph is good. I would still be like in the observations, try to provide some more direct quotes, but it's, I like how you were, and then the first, in fact, the paragraphs up here are okay too, with the way that you're using the different data sources. So that's a good thing. You're using all the different data sources. But when you're using the data sources, you can use more direct quotes, be more specific, and perhaps talk about more specifically one topic instead of talking about too much in one paragraph. Because remember, one paragraph is about one idea. It talks about one idea, and you might look at each topic sentence. Sorry, look at each topic sentence when you finish that paragraph, and make sure that that one topic sentence really represents the general idea of that one idea in your paragraph. Okay. Be careful too with spacing, and we want to have equal spacing between paragraphs and headings too. So, like this, we can delete this space. So. Okay. Anything else here we need to address?
No. Well, I have like this coding that because I follow like the advice you gave us, like it will be like an outline to follow. I don't know what do you think about this?
Error correction techniques. If you can go 3 deep So in the example that I provided, I think it was, they called it categories, then subcategories, and then codes. Before, I think I called it themes, categories, and codes. But I would try to include like 3 deep, where this is a code, maybe this is a subcategory, and then you have another general category. But yeah, this is the idea. This is.
So maybe I need to add one more.
Yeah, try to go three deep, like 3 layers. And or yeah, so you might even, looking at your results and discussion section, it might be like techniques, and then maybe within those techniques, can you categorize or create subcategories for those techniques, possibly?
Possibly, yes.
You know, if it, just try, if you know, if it's not possible, but try to, like, when maybe there's a category, subcategory, the when, like even before the class, during the class, after the class, for example.
Yes, because I have like the moments like right away, end of the class,
Okay.
when students finish talking.
But do you have then codes for each one of these?
Well, I have like this one, like if it was a direct correction or
Okay.
an indirect correction.
Okay.
So
you'll have codes for each one of these.
Yes, because
All
in
right.
the notes I have like many
Okay.
codes.
All right. So yes. So then that's fine. You have your categories, subcategories, and then you would add your codes.
And for example, here, students' feelings, opinion about errors, because there were few, but they had like a negative like feeling or
Right.
opinion. So it could be like positive or negative.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And then within those positive and negative, codes.
Yes.
Right. Okay, that's it. All right, Javier, any other questions?
No, sure.
So we're going to shoot for Friday, try to finish up by Friday. Again, around 2,250 words. Remember that the conclusion is going to be around 250 words, so we want to leave room for that in the section.
So the discussion and analysis, it is about
Approximately 2,250, more or less.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And believe me, you're going to fill up the words really fast. You really have to be selective about what you want to.
Yes, I think that at the end I will have to drop some.
Yeah, just talk about the most important, right? The things that are most interesting, right? Is that relate to your research.
Right.
Alrighty. Well, we'll see you then. If you have any questions, see me before next week. If you're not sure about something, or you want me to look at something in Google Drive, just send me an email.
Okay.
I'll do that. All right.
Excellent.
Alrighty. We'll see you later.